In current day OSRS, it seems like half the people you see in-game have some sort of helm next to their name. Various Ironman modes continue to increase in popularity the longer this game is out. Many people who have poured thousands upon thousands of hours into a main, myself included, have given Ironman a shot as an attempt to re-experience the game from a different angle. Ironman gets a lot of praise for giving life to content that would be dead if everyone had access to the Grand Exchange. And of course it gives you free reign to call anyone who isn't an Iron Man a Bondi and invalidate all of their achievements. So where did this all start? Well, apparently the whole idea can be traced back at the very least to Diablo 2, and in all likelihood much earlier than this. That's just the earliest example I could find. As far as RuneScape goes, I was able to find a forum post from a guy talking about his Iron Man style account in RuneScape 2. This post was from 2009, and according to what he had written, he had reached some pretty impressive stats for the time, if the post is legit. Mainly, he mentions that he reached 95 prayer, 92 agility, and 94 construction. He also claimed to have achieved full Armadillo by this point. Now obviously non-group Ironmen in this day and age have to solo most bosses, Kree included, but it's unclear if this guy was playing with this restriction or not. In any case, his account was still pretty impressive by RS2 standards. As far as OSRS goes, YouTuber My Name is Bodhi played a huge role in popularizing Iron Man style gameplay with his 2014 one-man army series. This was an unofficial Iron Man account as the mode wasn't out yet, but it would be released a few months after the series started. One key difference that One Man Army had from regular Iron Man is that Bodhi allowed himself to use items that he PK'd for on this account as long as he had the item unlocked. Of course, official Iron Men cannot do this, but recently they were given the ability to pick up loot keys and give them to a main. Regardless, this series was likely a driving factor to push Jagex to actually add this mode into the game. Back in the early days of OSRS, Iron Man accounts were still not very common, and the game mode was a lot more tedious as many new training methods and minigames that exist now were not in the game at that point. Since then, however, a lot of new content has been released with Iron Men in mind. A few examples that come to mind are Mahogany Homes or Giant's Foundry. While Mahogany Homes offers much slower XP than traditional construction training, you get more XP per plank, which is crucial for Iron Men. The same is true in terms of XP per bar in Giant's Foundry, despite the fact that XP rates are still lower than doing gold bars in Blast Furnace. This is crucial for Iron Men because of course they cannot buy huge quantities of supplies on the GE, which means maximizing the XP value gained from each supply is the most efficient way for them to train in most cases, being as you would have to factor in the time that it would take to obtain said supplies when thinking about efficiency. Minigames like Wintertod or Temperos are of course very popular as well, as they provide Iron Men with large quantities of materials that they can use for a variety of different skills as well as offering solid XP rates. In addition to the skilling methods I just mentioned, Corrupted Gauntlet, released in 2019, is a very Iron Man friendly boss, being as it does not require you to bring your own gear, which makes it very lucrative for Iron Men looking to get into PvM to just jump right into and start getting efficient kills right off the bat. This boss provides Iron Men with a ton of raw gold in the form of alkables, as well as various other skilling supplies, and of course the Bofa with the crystal armor, which is a viable range setup for most PvM in the game. It's very much worth noting that this boss, along with all the training methods I mentioned, are perfectly fine to do on a main. They might not be the very most efficient thing to do, but these are by no means Iron Man exclusive activities. I say this because the one criticism I do hear about Iron Man mode is that originally Jagex was not planning to release updates with Iron Man in mind. It was supposed to be just a self-imposed challenge, and of course this mode has become so popular that clearly they are now releasing content with Iron Man in mind. Although I don't play an Iron Man, I realize they're a large portion of the community at this point, so I have no problem with this personally. On the flip side, many people will claim that Iron Man mode was originally how RuneScape was meant to be played, and there are elements of truth to this of course, but it is not the whole picture. Trading has been around ever since RuneScape Classic, but the Grand Exchange wasn't, and neither were bonds, which you can now buy for real money and sell for gold. With that being said, real world trade was also alive and well since RuneScape Classic. OSRS itself was released without the Grand Exchange, which encouraged a different gameplay style. Definitely take this with a grain of salt, because I did not play much OSRS back when it first came out, but from what little experience I had, finding the supplies you needed for a good price from another player could be inconvenient at times, and if you didn't want to deal with this, you could just farm your own supplies. So the gameplay loop of a pre-Grand Exchange RuneScape did have a lot of similarities with Ironman mode. Of course, rich players back then always had the option of buying good gear as opposed to farming it out themselves, and I'd say this was an intended mechanic of the game all along. That is the whole point of being rich after all, and it is an MMO. When we look at how to build up an Ironman efficiently versus how to build up a main efficiently, clearly you're going to be doing more different activities as an Ironman. As a disclaimer here, I have only leveled an Ironman to slightly over 1700 total level, so I'll surely be more knowledgeable on mainscape activities. So basically, if your goal is to max an account and attain max gear, on a main the path is pretty straightforward. You will use the fastest training methods you can afford for every skill, and of course buy all your supplies on the Grand Exchange. To finance this, you will simply do whatever your best money making method at your current level is, usually some form of PVM. Now, from a pure efficiency perspective, once you have a decent gear setup, there's technically no reason to ever do anything other than whatever is the most profitable boss in the game, which is currently Duo Nex. I cannot stress enough that there is no one forcing you to play like this at all, and if you don't want to, you shouldn't. Personally, I wasn't too efficient when maxing my account, but I did make the majority of my bank just spamming TOA around the time of its release, when it was by far the best money in the game. But had I been an Ironman, I would not have been able to brute force my way to max gear like this. All an Ironman would have to gain from TOA is the uniques from that raid. No doubt there's a lot of BIS gear in there, but there's more gear outside of there, and TOA is just one piece of the puzzle. The path for an Ironman to get to max gear is much more varied and will without a doubt require a ton more bossing overall. Even as a max efficiency Ironman, you'll be mixing up your activities a lot more. You very well might kill the same boss 1,000 times in a row to get a drop, but then you're gonna have to do that with 10 other bosses. Even if you get BIS gear on an Ironman like Torva from Nex, you need to repair it using Bandos pieces, which means you would have to have Bandos from Grardor, and Missouri that you get from TOA can be fortified with Armadillo pieces, which are worth getting from Kree. All the BIS Desert Treasure 2 rings come from different bosses that you'll likely need to kill around 1,000 times each to obtain. The list goes on. Needless to say, as a main, you can get into max gear without doing nearly as many KCs as an Iron. Of course, you can play however you want. You can do no bosses whatsoever. You can harvest all your own supplies on a main, but I'm just outlining how you would get into BIS gear efficiently. Personally, I think it's fun to mix it up, but as a main, I could have easily just done non-stop Vorkath and then transitioned into non-stop raids and end up in the same gear setup I have today. So for players who want to vary their gameplay while also being efficient, I think Ironman is a good solution. Jagex was very smart to capitalize on people's interest in this style of gameplay early on in OSRS, as Ironman content is one of the most popular genres of OSRS video. Of course, OSRS content like this promotes the game in a positive way, which is the best marketing that Jagex can ask for. Settled was the most watched OSRS YouTuber in 2022, and is to my knowledge the most subscribed OSRS YouTuber right now, although if I'm wrong about this, let me know because I'm actually curious. Something that strikes me about his videos is that he seems to explain things to people as if they may have not ever actually played OSRS, meaning he does probably have a large amount of viewers who have indeed never played this game. There is no doubt Jagex loves to see this kind of exposure for OSRS. There are now a massive amount of these restricted Ironman series out there, vastly outnumbering the amount of videos of people building main accounts, at least that I see. All in all, I think that these various Ironman modes are great for the longevity of OSRS, even though I gave up on my iron a long time ago. It wasn't for me, but it might be for you. I just love using the GE, I can't help it. At the end of the day, having different different yet entirely optional ways to experience the same game is a great way to make OSRS last indefinitely.